Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy that you're here with us tonight. This evening, we're talking about the roadmap to college, what rising 8th, 9th, and 10th graders should be doing now to stand out for college. My name is Ann Dolin, and I am your host this evening. So for the last 24 years, my tutors, executive function coaches, test prep tutors for the SAT, ACT, and our college planners have been helping kids to do well in school and to apply to the colleges of their choice. This evening, we're going to be discussing a topic for slightly younger kids, but the good news is I have an expert in the house. Her name is Lisa Gastaldi, and she's going to help us along the way. I'll introduce her in just a moment. But before we get started, I am curious, what grade is your student in? When will your student graduate from high school? So you're going to see a poll come up in just a second. And if you go ahead and put in your child's current year, are they a rising 8th grader, 9th grader, 10th grader, or other? Thank you so much. And let's see what we have. Awesome. Okay, it looks like we've got 30% 8th graders, 31%, 36% 9th graders, 34% 10th graders, and then some others along the way. So awesome. Great. So mostly, actually spread across the gamut. So sometimes as parents, we think, oh, if my child's only going to 8th or 9th grade, it's too early. But actually, it's not. It's not too early to learn about what's going to happen because you don't want to be stuck at the last minute scrambling to get everything done. So we're going to find that balance tonight. So please meet Lisa Gastaldi. Lisa is awesome. She is our college counselor here at Educational Connections. And Lisa has so much experience in working with kids. For 20 years, she's had experience as a college counselor, and she's national board certified. She has a master's degree in counseling psychology, and she is a member of NACAC, amongst other organizations. And NACAC is an association for college counselors. Lisa has worked with over 4,000 students in 20 years, and she's helped them to apply to all kinds of schools, including some of the top ones. University of UVA, Duke, University of Chicago, all of the UC schools, and UNC, Stanford, among many others. And probably more importantly, she's been on over 500 campus visits. So Lisa, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us this evening.
Thank you, Anne. It's great to be here and a great topic to talk about when we start school.
Awesome. I think so too. So let's start out by talking about why it's important to start the conversation early within your family.
So the decision to go to college is a very personal one, and each student needs to decide what is best for him or her. So talking with your teen about their future really begins early. Try to help your child identify their goals. Finding a balance will help children to do their best and be able to look forward to what is ahead rather than to be overwhelmed by it. At this stage, the college conversations are all about reassuring children that they are up to the task at hand. Part of the college conversations during these years include preparing to take college entrance exams, deciding on a major, maintaining the highest grades possible, and staying focused until graduation. There are so many options for children after high school. College is just one. Try to address the questions about the different paths early. The options other than four-year college include a trade, military, work or gap year, or community college. Students need to ask themselves, why do they want to go to college? There could be many reasons for attending college. Maybe they don't want to enter the workforce yet. Prepare for a career, be with their friends, have fun. And another tip I always tell folks at this time is to start conversations with other students that maybe are in college or family members, just to get their perspective.
I love that. I like the idea of starting early. So planning ahead can really reduce stress when it comes to thinking about college. Why is planning ahead so important when it comes to 8th, 9th, and 10th graders?
So by planning ahead and talking about the process early, this can help families improve communication, surrounding the process of graduation from high school and beyond. Teens are already facing the pressure of increased rigor in their schoolwork, fitting in socially, finding their path, and handling those activities. Children can pick up on their parents' emotions, so finding a way to temper your own anxiety about the process can help them. Be involved, but not overly involved. Provide counsel and insight when appropriate, and empower your child to grow and develop through the process. Planning ahead can also help thinking about how to pay for college. Families need to be open and honest about the cost of college and if there's money available for college. Having that conversation early with your child about financing the education, like we've been saving for years, or we're planning on taking out loans, can help them understand that financial piece.
Thank you, Lisa. That's super helpful. When we think about the academic side of things, though, one of the things I found interesting is sometimes kids are unsure of what courses to take. And so they kind of just take whatever suggested, especially in math. And then when they go to apply to college, they realize, oh, shoot, I'm not on the track I should have been on. I should have actually taken a higher level math in 9th grade to put me on a different trajectory. Why is course selection important when we talk about starting early?
So I want to emphasize that the typical high school graduation requirements are just those, they're minimum graduation requirements. So students planning to go to college will have to potentially take more than just the minimum for college admissions. So typically in the admissions process, the transcript includes all courses and grades, and it's one of the main factors in determining admissions to universities. College admissions officers want to see a solid foundation of learning that you can build on in college. So first and foremost, colleges look at the core classes that students are taking. Core, as you talked about, Anne, means math, English, science, social studies, and foreign language. A student should take a minimum of 5 solid academic classes per semester. The grades the student earns in these courses are also very important. To ready yourself for college level work, colleges want to see challenging high school courses such as honors, AP, or even IB. If possible, colleges like to see students maybe take a class at the local community college. So I think it's important for parents to ask their children what academic areas are interesting to them. What academic subjects do they enjoy the least, and what is the reason? If math and science are their strength, they should plan on taking those every year. Some colleges might also want to see 3 years of a foreign language, and most high schools might only have a 2-year graduation requirement. If there are electives that are offered through the school, engaging in some of those electives might help determine areas of interest for the student or a potential talent area. This too can help with determining a potential college major. One thing we really haven't talked about yet is those NCAA student athletes. And it's so important on the courses that the NCAA, they have very strict requirements on courses that meet their standards. So if a student is thinking about playing college athletics, they really need to work with their coach or high school counselor to ensure that the courses that they're taking at their high school will make them a qualified student athlete.
I remember you telling me about a student you worked with who, I can't remember what course you mentioned, but thought that it was an appropriate course, but it turns out it was not approved by the NCAA. What happened in that case?
Well, anytime a high school offers a brand new course, it has to go through an audit program with the NCAA. So the counselor, whoever's in charge of the courses, has to submit that course to the NCAA to make sure that it's approved. And in some cases, they won't approve them because the hours don't meet curriculum, or the course you're talking about, I think, was a marine science course that did not have a lab component to it. So it was one of those courses that wasn't approved by the NCAA. So it's important that the school keeps on top of it, but it's also important that the student is aware.
And I know when you work with younger students, you work with kids going into 8th grade and going into 9th grade, you're really focused a lot on course selection. especially if they want to, go into an engineering program. Taking really challenging math early on to set themselves up is important. What are some other courses that they would want to challenge themselves with? And how do you help kids define what would be a challenging class based on their interests when they're younger?
So one of the things I always tell parents is, if a student and I just had a meeting this week with a parent and student who it's a rising ninth grader, and they were really struggling in their eighth grade math, as far as they took algebra 1. So I was talking to them about potentially retaking, seeing if the school would allow them to retake the algebra 1 in ninth grade, because the student had such a hard time with it, because math is one of those typical courses that has to build on itself. So they were going to investigate that. But anytime a student is interested in, let's say, engineering, I'm always telling them that the science and math areas are the areas that they really need to focus on, and potentially taking an AP calculus class during their school year, as well as AP physics are some of the courses that I would recommend.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we know grades are important. We know that grades are really, really important in the core subjects. So not as much marketing or PE, but definitely those 5 core subjects. And for many of our kids, it's taking 4 years of a language. I know that most competitive schools want to see 4 or 5 years of a language. So we know about the academic part, but what's different in the last few years is the testing component, and schools that have gone test optional, which most of them are now. So the question is, when it comes to the SAT and ACT, should, first of all, kids take the test? And if they do, how do you know which test is better? What are the recommendations that you give to families?
So, I was looking online and just for some statistics, because I'm a data person. So according to the College Board, 83% of students say they want the option to submit test scores in college applications. So you have to take it from the source. It's the College Board, which runs the SAT, but I think students want to be able to see how they're going to do on those tests. So before making the decision. And that's the kind of the luxury where we're at right now, is that a lot of colleges have gone test optional because of the pandemic. So, but for the younger kids, you just never know if that kind of landscape will change. So I highly recommend students take the standardized tests in high school, not to avoid them. If their school offers the PSAT or pre-ACT, especially if they offer it the 9th and 10th grade, I would take it. Typically that PSAT is in the junior year, but if they can offer it in the earlier years, that gives them a little bit more practice, and kind of so they can see how the tests are formulated and how they run. So there's only one school system right now out there. It's the University of California that has said that they will never bring the SAT and ACT back. So we might see some of those, that test requirement coming back. If a student has a bad semester, and the transcript reflects it, having a good SAT or ACT score can actually help them in the admissions process. So I think students should take the tests and not send them anywhere, and then make the decision when they're finished testing if the student's going to go test optional or not.
Because I can imagine, and the kids that we've worked with over the years, sometimes when we create their list with them, and I know you do this a ton with your kids, you want to make sure that students have a balanced list where they have some reach schools, some target schools, some safety schools, if you will. So a score they might have a good score, but they may not submit it to a top school on their list, but it may be stellar for maybe a reach school, and could really, or not a reach school, but a safety school or a target school. So for kids with average scores, it seems like a score could still help them, maybe not for their top schools, but for other schools. Have
Right.
you seen that to be the case?
Yes. And the other thing I also tell students is to try both the SAT and the ACT. And we're going to talk about the SAT going digital. I think the ACT is behind with that, but to try them both one time and see, and we're talking down the road, which is, end of sophomore year, junior year. but to try them both one time, see which one they like better and do better on, and then that would be the one to either study or prep, tutor for, and then retake it. There are some schools out there that most schools super score the SAT, and some even super score the ACT, which means that they're going to take the best score from the sitting and put them together so that that helps the student.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. And parents, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat. I'll ask them as we go, and we'll save time at the end for questions as well. All right. So Lisa, you mentioned about the SAT going digital. Tell us a little bit about that.
So according to the College Board, the digital SAT will be easier to take, easier to give and to take and to give and to be more relevant. That's what they're saying. They've gotten some input from educators and students, and they're trying to adapt to ensure that they continue to meet everyone's evolving needs. I think they saw the writing on the wall with the pandemic that they have to improve what they're doing, because so many schools went test optional. The issue with the SAT, as far as not going away completely, is it's the only national yardstick that a lot of schools have, like a lot of universities have. Every high school in the country has a different curriculum, different grading style, different courses that they offer, but the SAT and ACT are pretty consistent through the country as far as the testing. So that's what makes it hard to eliminate completely. So this is the digital SAT is coming in the not 2023, but 2024. I think they're doing testing, right? They're doing some test cases out there. It will feature shorter reading passages with questions tied to each passage and reflect a wider range of topics that represent the work that students are going to do in college. Calculators are going to be allowed no matter what. Students will get the test scores back in days rather than weeks. The students are still going to have to go to a testing center, but it's going to be all on a computer. If the student doesn't have a computer, the College Board says it will supply them, or the school will supply them. So there are definitely some other things that they're talking about as far as like connectivity. They're worried about, they have an autosave situation where if a student loses power or loses internet, then it's not going to lose their work. They think that this is going to make the SAT more secure because it's going to be practically impossible to share answers.
Super helpful. Thank you, Lisa. And speaking of taking both tests to kind of determine which one you like best, we offer those as mock tests, meaning these are tests that they're retired tests. So they're extremely similar to what kids would sit down and take now for an actual test, but they don't go in the student's record. They're just for kids' own data and for their parents. And we offer these virtually with a live proctor. So kids can roll out of bed on a Saturday morning and they can take a practice test. And to your point, Lisa, taking both tests is important because what our data shows is that about 30% of kids are clearly better at one test than the other. Like they clearly have a strength, either at the SAT or the ACT. And that's good to know because you want to go with your strength. But for about 2/3 of kids, there is, they're scoring about the same. So for those students, knowing which test they felt more comfortable is important. And the reason just taking one test is helpful is because, first of all, it saves you time and preparation. It reduces a lot of stress. But every college in the country takes both tests. They don't care, if you submit an SAT or an ACT. It doesn't matter to them. So kids should just really figure out which test is their strength or they like best and go for that one. So these are upcoming test dates we have. They're all on our website, and you can also hold up your phone in the camera and scan this QR code, and it will go straight to the mock test day, and you can just sign up directly on our website for one of these tests. So already we shared a lot of information with you, and we're going to talk about some more in terms of helping kids to craft their narrative early on. But if questions are swirling your head, please put them in the chat. And I also want to introduce our college counseling coordinator. And that's Erin Ebert. Erin works specifically with kids and parents in our college counseling program. She's been with the company for 12 years, so she really, really knows her stuff and can help you, number one, determine how to set your child up for success in the early years. If you want to work with Lisa or one of our other college counselors, or if you just kind of want to talk about where your child is at the current point and, have a sounding board. So you can contact Erin by scanning this QR code, and you can set up a phone call with her right there on our site. All right, and here's our website too, if that's helpful to you. It's ectutoring.com. So Lisa, let's go back to helping kids at a young age differentiate themselves without causing any stress through the process. Why is this important, and why are extracurriculars important when it comes to standing out in college?
So I was just having a conversation actually with a rising ninth grader who I said, what are you going to do when you're in high school? And she was, I have no idea. Like, she has no idea what she wants to do. So hopefully I said to her that there'll be a club fair or some kind of fair where you can find out which clubs are offered. So extracurriculars obviously cannot substitute for good grades and solid test scores, and they have moderate importance in factoring into college applications. We'll call it a soft factor. So it's important for students to be thoughtful and strategic about their extracurricular involvement. Pursuing extracurriculars demonstrates the following key qualities to admissions: drive, commitment, time management, talent, interest. So what counts as an extracurricular? Let's just talk about that. So an activity doesn't have to be sponsored or endorsed by the high school to be a legitimate extracurricular. Working part-time, caring for an elderly relative, volunteering or creating your own small business, dog walking, social media monitoring. I'm giving some examples here so we can, so people can get the idea. Selling your artwork online can count as much or not more than like a French club or a jazz band. If you can describe why the experience is meaningful and pertinent to your academic interests or important to your growth as a human, that's what colleges want to hear. Schools look to extracurriculars to determine characteristics that you are going to add to their student body, such as leadership and thoughtful commitment to service. So when we talk about quantity or quality, schools consider extracurriculars only to learn more about you as a person, not to tally how many clubs or activities you've amassed. So consider joining an extracurricular activity, and this is what I told this girl, if the activity tells the authentic story of who you are. Will it build my character? Will it expand my intellect? And this is hard for a ninth grader to think about, but they're thinking, does it have some meaning? Do I really care about it? Those are things that they're looking for, that you're intentional on doing your extracurriculars. Shoot for 2 or 3 that you care about deeply, and don't feel locked in to traditional sports, student government, and service. Colleges are not looking for the set number, and you just have to articulate your purpose, really. And the other thing I'm telling my kids is keep a resume. Start it in the 9th grade. Add activities as you do them, and the number of hours you're spending, and the time per week. And I'm always a big fan of volunteering, because I do think, kids can't work in the 9th and 10th grade, but they can start volunteering and that definitely has a purpose.
Sometimes when we've had member of these webinars, parents will say, my child doesn't really have any interests, or they just play soccer. They don't really know what they want to do, which is completely normal. I don't know many 14-year-olds that say, I want to major in this. They just don't. Right. How do you help when you're working with kids and they see themselves as very average, as many kids do? How do you help hone what they're good at, or what they have potential to do, and steer them in that direction?
Well, sports is its own animal. I really feel like a student that is involved in like a travel club or a club sport, there really isn't a lot of time, if they're doing it year round, to do other things. So what I usually tell them is try to find a pocket of time to do something. And it can be, you know, like a simple volunteer service, or it can be helping out at school doing something. It's not something you have to do weekly, but anything you do, you have to keep track of. But I would say, you know, probably the ninth grade is a time to really experiment with some clubs at school. You're starting a new school, so try some clubs at school. Try to think about what is interesting to you and fun. And then that would be the route to go. I know it's hard for a 14-year-old to figure that out, but I do think that they need to expand their mind a little bit and try something different.
That's a good point. So we talked about grades and testing and extracurriculars. It's a lot to think about. At what age do kids start to actually think about looking at colleges and researching colleges?
So it's my dream that every junior has a solid college list. Now that is like the dream of the lifetime. It doesn't always happen. So what I'm encouraging my younger kids to do is to start the research now. And they keep saying, oh, it's way too early. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not too early. So there are numerous ways that kids can start doing research, whether that be, you know, going online and just taking a look, but of what is out there. There's always college visits that come up that are national college fairs or college visits to high school. But they need to understand, they need to start beginning to understand that there's different types of colleges out there, and to seek out resources that, you know, to find out how to start looking at them. There are liberal arts colleges and universities. There are historically Black colleges, universities, there's women's colleges. So just starting to look at size, location, majors, campus life, diversity and cost, all of those things can make a decision. And there isn't one set college for every student. And they're always thinking that there's this golden apple out there, and there's several colleges that can fit. So just by having some resources, whether it be online or even those old college guidebooks that we used to use, those are still in existence. Students can, you know, look at college websites and talk to admissions officers as early as the ninth grade.
I was volunteering with JMU last week, and I was talking to the admissions director, and I asked her, because I always, you know, told my own kids, you go to a college fair. For example, in Northern Virginia, there's one coming up in October at George Mason University, if that one is still definitely on. And kids get a QR code, and they can take that QR code to each booth and scan it. And she said, you know, also the person there at the booth is likely the person who's going to read your application. So following up, she said, anytime you make contact, your email goes into a file. And so when they're reviewing your application, even if you wrote it in ninth grade, it's still in your file. Is that something that kids could maybe go with an older sibling to a college fair and get a little QR code, get it scanned, and maybe follow up with somebody?
Yes, going to a national college fair like that, never having been at one, it's overwhelming. So my suggestion for anyone thinking about going to the college fair at George Mason is have a list of questions, and make a plan. So you can actually see the colleges that are going to be there, and map out, because you'll walk into this huge conference area, and it's loud and it's busy and it's stressful. So kind of preparing before you go is always a good thing. And also going up and talking to people. I think kids are so afraid to talk to people that they have to if they have a few questions, they can go up and ask every single college the same question and just see how it goes. And then the college will have them either scan the QR code or fill out an interest form. And that is demonstrated interest, and that some colleges do consider that in the application process.
Well, maybe that would be a good thing to go with an older sibling, but you wouldn't at this point bring your 8th grader to a large college fair, or your 9th grader. That just feels like a little over the top, doesn't it?
Well, I'd say for a 10th grader, it might be a good choice, 10th and 11th, yes.
Got it. Great. All right. So I know your big thing, Lisa, is especially when you work with younger kids, is to really demystify the process, to let kids and parents know this is what will happen so that they know and they feel in control of the situation. And also that there is a college for everybody. Talk a little bit about that and the message that you want to make sure families get.
So as I said, you have to get to know the college. It's shopping. You know, I feel like it is trying to find the right fit for your student. They're not all the same. Each university is going to have a different mission. They're going to have a different culture. They'll have different types of students. Some kids want huge athletic programs. Some kids don't care. Sometimes it's a big city that they want, or sometimes they want to be out in the middle of nowhere. So you do, you know, few decisions that you make in your life are more important than a college decision. So the career paths can open for students. They make the friends of their life when they're in college. But I don't think that you have to go by the area of the country in which you're likely to live to pick a college. You can go far away and still move home. But it's important to remember choosing a college or even a list of colleges to apply to is not an exact science. And like I said, there's not one perfect college for anyone. Instead, colleges, the trick is to find your unique priority for selecting a college and research the characteristics of the college and then make a list. And when I'm helping students put together a list, I try to have a couple reach, couple target, and a couple safety schools, just so that there are options after the application process happens. But I think parents and students need to start that conversation about the college, you know, which college might fit for them. You know, how far do your parents want you to travel? Is that, you know, something that comes up? But then there are other things, you know, like large lectures, small classes. Do I have hands-on learning? All of those things that go into finding the right fit.
So decisions or discussions about specific colleges would be kind of later on, you know, and especially crafting the list would be more in the junior year.
Yeah,
Correct?
I've had some parents actually tell me that they have gone to their college reunion and brought their child along. So if the mom and dad are doing their college reunions, it's a good chance for them to get a feel for what is a college campus. I think, you know, you have to remember, how did you pick your high school? You probably bought your house in a good school district and you did the research, and you know, maybe that's how people have picked their school. So you didn't just one day wake up and say, I think I'll go to Yale, right? It was more of a process of evaluating and looking around and seeing what's out there.
Thank you, Lisa. That's helpful. So if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, it's okay. We can help and we can help you get started early. So we have programs specifically for kids that are in just going into 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. And we help them map out their plan, which I'll talk about in a second. We have specific programs for rising 11th graders, so incoming juniors. And then right now, for our kids that are going to be seniors, we have something called the Senior Express, which is a super condensed package to help them finalize their list, complete their essays, get their applications done, craft their narrative, and make sure they get everything done by the fall. So if we can be helpful to you, here's a QR code, and here's also our website, ectutoring.com, and then there's a tab that says college counseling at the top. Now, for specifically for younger kids, because I know that's why you're here, let me tell you a little bit about what we help students with. We help them, number one, plan their summers. What are they going to do in their summers? So right now, it's, you know, we're now going into the school year. So this would be for next summer. We'll help them craft what they're going to do. And when it comes to things like overnight programs or camps, that's actually usually done in the winter or sometimes in the fall. Is that right, Lisa, for the following summer?
Yeah, some of the more popular summer programs do fill up, and so there is an application process for them and letters of recommendation. So some of these program and students have to write an essay, so they're trying to get you to start thinking about college even for the summer programs. But some of them are the highly competitive ones are probably December, January, February timeframe.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful to know. And then for our older students going into their junior year, sophomore year and junior year, we'll help them with their preliminary list development. Probably most important is their course selection. And even now, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, my child may have signed up for the wrong course, you can still actually make a change. And we're happy to help you with that. Craft the high school resume. And then just career exploration. Lisa has an assessment for kids to kind of figure out what they actually love to do, even though they may not know it yet, where their natural gifts lie. And for kids that often think there's nothing special about me, I'm kind of average, which many of them do. I love the assessment that helps kind of tease out their natural strengths. Lisa, have you found that to be helpful with kids?
I think it's eye-opening, and they're not hard tests to take. We call them tests. They're not hard assessments to take, and I think kids get nervous that I'm going to be examining their like math ability. But they're easy questions like, would you rather go to a movie, go to the theater, or stay home and watch TV? Just so and they're on personality, they're on learning style, they're on I'm trying to think of all of them. Oh, I should have reviewed this, but there are 4 separate ones on there that we give, and I think the kids find them pretty fun and eye-opening.
I love them too. Thanks, Lisa. All right. So again, Erin is your girl. If we can help you, here is her contact information and her QR code. All right. So we would love to go to Q&A right now. So if you have a question, please throw it in the chat. Lisa, we're going to go to questions in just a second. But before we do, I want to say thank you for joining us this evening. You've been so helpful to our families, I know. And then these are some upcoming webinars that we have. August 4th is Kickoff to College, and this one is specifically for rising juniors and seniors, what they should be doing. August 18th, a different topics, executive function and ADHD crash course, organization and study skills specifically for younger students, elementary and middle school. And then August 30th, we have executive function and ADHD crash course for high school students. And these are actually really for parents. So what little things you can do at home to help your kids that may struggle with things like organization, time management, and study habits. All right, so let's get going to our Q&A. And afterwards, when you log off, a survey will pop up on your screen. And if you could be so kind to fill that out and submit it, we would love that. It would be really helpful to understand what was helpful to you this evening. All right, Lisa, let's get started and look at some of the questions in our chat. All right. What is a good time to start SAT coaching from Pallavi?
Oh, you want me to answer this one? Okay, so
Sure.
I would I think that students when they're in their classes and they are doing what they can do in English and math. So you have to remember that they have to get through a certain amount of curriculum before they're going to be ready for the SAT and really understand what the SAT and ACT are all about. So I typically would say probably when the student is finishing or mid-year of Algebra 2, a lot of the math kind of directs that because the Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 are what is contained on the SAT and ACT. So you wouldn't want to start them on the coaching until they are pretty much have seen a lot of the curriculum that's going to be on there because they might be get nervous, I think, if they hadn't seen the math part. So just thinking math wise, I think that's a good choice. And Anne, you're the expert on this. So
yes, I would say so. What the statistics say is that kids get their best score the spring of their junior year. So we've seen this shift in the last 5 or 8 years that kids take the test early and often. And early would be they're taking it like right away in the fall of their junior year. And like Lisa said, if they haven't had enough math under their belt or they're not really high test scores, I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket and like take it twice in the fall and then just to be done with it, because it could be you're leaving your best score off the table by taking it again in the spring. And the reason kids have better scores in the spring is because they're older, they're more mature, and they have more curriculum under their belt. They've just been in school longer. And so that makes sense. And so in general, kids will take the test 2 or 3 times. And even if they take it earlier, they should again take it in the spring. And then we have kids now that are taking it still in the summer before their senior year, and you can actually take the October test in the fall of your senior year and still get into apply early action, which is November 1st. And Lisa, along those lines, Rebecca asked, is there an advantage to taking both SAT and ACT? I would say generally no. You know, my experience has been pick one test, stay in your lane, because you don't want to go overboard. You know, we know that test scores are helpful, but they're not the end all be all anymore. So your focus really should be primarily on your grades. If you want to split your time and study for both, you can, but it's not totally necessary, because again, every college accepts both tests equally and they don't have a preference. Let's get to a question from Mandy. With peers taking AP Calculus and AP Physics and 4 or 5 AP classes per year, how can my student compete without taking these if she has no interest in a STEM career and would probably be miserable in AP Calc or Physics?
I know I'd be miserable in AP Calc and
Same
Physics.
here.
So my suggestion is that if she is great in the humanities, if she likes English and she likes social studies, then I would stick with the English social studies, maybe try an AP Psych. It depends on what the school offers. If she's not an AP student, I would definitely try to stretch a little in at least 1 or 2 areas, just to kind of set her apart from the college prep, because colleges are looking for students to try a risk, to try to prepare themselves for college level work. Another option is if the high school offers dual enrollment, dual credit courses, which are taking courses at the local community college. Sometimes kids find those a tad easier than the AP and their college credit. So that could be something to try if the school offers it or in the summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. One parent asked, is it okay if your child only likes one thing? Like they're really deeply involved in one extracurricular. Is that good?
Well, I was a basketball player and I realized that's why I brought up the athletic piece, because I really had no time to do anything else. I was doing travel, sports. So I think sports are definitely one of those things that colleges realize that it takes a lot of time, a lot of practice, and they do take that into consideration. But they will look for leadership roles within the one extracurricular. So let's say it's not a sport, but it is something else. It takes a lot of time. It could be dance or musical theater or something. Taking some kind of leadership role in that area would help for sure.
So maybe the captain of their basketball team, or maybe they started a shoe donation drive for underprivileged kids for basketball shoes. Is that kind of what you mean? Something like that?
Yes. Okay. Or
Great.
teaching little kids how to play, or, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Stevana asks, what if your student has failed a class? How do you build back from that? The student has had a 504 and currently has an IEP. What do you do if you have a bad grade, basically? Do you retake the test? Do you try to explain it away, or retake the class, explain it away? How do you deal with that?
Well, schools might have a policy that the student might not be able to retake it. There is a place on the application, and there's a lot of things going on here as far as why did they fail? Was it illness? Was it, was there something? I know it's 504 IEP. Did they struggle with the content? So there are places on the college application to explain kind of a funky thing about the transcript. So if there's one failed course and everything else is A's and B's, they have a chance to kind of explain away that failure. Sometimes when students have to take time off from school, that's a place that they can also write it. But I'm just trying to think of what were the condition, you have to explain what were the conditions behind the failure.
Thank you, Lisa. Um, Ami asks, how many colleges do kids normally apply to? How many do you make sure when you're working with students that they have on their list, Lisa?
The younger kids, I try to throw as many on there as possible, and then we whittle them down. Hopefully by the time they're juniors, we have a list between 7 and 12. So, just starting the process with younger kids, it's easy, it's good for them to see admissions rates, graduation rates, what the majors are. So we start looking at all of that within, we use College Planner Pro, which is a computer system that a computer program that has all that information. So, typically a 9th and 10th grader, we could have started with 40 schools, but yet we're trying to whittle it down to a list of 7 to 12.
I bet that's a lot of fun for kids to grow schools on their list.
Well, they always ask, why? Why did you put that school? And sometimes it's just a school that I know that might have an equestrian program with, interior design. So some of their things they might be looking for, I just kind of throw them on there.
I love that. Kind of along the same lines, how do you encourage a child that doesn't really want to do anything? Rebecca said her son is happy to sit home and play video games.
Well, I guess I would have a carrot out there for him. I do think it's important that he gets out there and does something else. But I think that it might be something along the lines of video games. He could take potentially a course in game design or there are so many clubs at school now that kind of focus on gaming. So trying to get him to socialize with somebody other than the computer would be a great thing, because I think that is a definite need. When a student is going to college, they're going to be forced to socialize with other people.
Yeah, and even asking kids like, oh, watching them play the video game and saying, oh, I can see why you like this. Tell me about this game, what's happening, and getting them to open up about it. I know one of my kids was kind of like that, and he was into video editing, and he ended up taking a class for high school students at a local college, and he loved it, and he met kids that were also into that, and it was just a really great outlet for him. So I think even if kids just play video games, there's still lots of things for them to do. Thanks for that, Lisa. Shannon asked, what's an example of a summer program that a student would need to apply to?
Notre Dame has several programs, summer programs that students have to apply for, and they're very competitive. And I think that the deadline for them is February. MIT, Yale, any of the colleges, really any college has a summer program. That's kind of how they fill the dorms and keep business open in the summer, is to and try to recruit students to their campus. But if you think of the most popular colleges out there, the Ivy Leagues, Notre Dame, Stanford, they will have summer programs that are pretty competitive, and students have to apply because everybody wants to go to Stanford in the summer.
It sounds pretty prestigious, their summer programs. Jennifer asks, if you're concerned about your child being overwhelmed when they start high school, are they better off taking basic classes and getting a better grade, or should you push them a little bit to take honors classes, especially if they're completely qualified to take those honors classes?
Well, I would start the year potentially asking the teacher. So it really comes down to, what are their skills? Are they better in English and math, English and social studies, or better in math and science? I mean, those are typically the pairs that go together. A student doesn't have to take all honors classes their freshman year, but I would say by the end of their high school, that they should at least attempt an honors or AP course to be competitive for college admissions.
And it likely depends on what the honors classes are like. For example, the school district I'm in, the honors classes aren't really actually very hard. And they're, kids can still have mediocre skills and get a good grade in honors classes. So if the majority of kids are in honors classes and your child the teachers have said they are capable, I think it's fine, especially like you said, Lisa, if in a subject that they like. But if math, I'd say the exception is math. If they really struggle in math, which is cumulative, you might put them in the average setting to make sure that they can build those skills. Math, a foreign language, and as kids get older, a math-based science, those are all cumulative classes. So you don't want your kids to get behind in those courses. They can dig themselves out of a hole in history and English. But in a cumulative class, it's super hard for kids to help themselves and to get themselves out of the situation. So you want to make sure that they're placed correctly in those courses. Petra asks, what do you mean by craft and narrative?
So we've talked about this at length, I think, at other webinars, but so a student needs to have a purpose when they're applying to college. So the college wants to see that there is a theme or a brand of the student when they are applying. So that's why when I talked about extracurriculars, I said, make sure it's something that they're passionate about or they enjoy and not just do it to do it. So I'll just give you an example. So I had a student that thought she wanted to be a forensic scientist, went to a summer so she was doing things in forensics. So she took an elective in forensic science. She went to a summer program at Johns Hopkins and decided and came home and said, I think I want to study business, because she just knew that she did not want to do forensic science. So then she got on the business track. And so she then was taking business courses. She took a couple in the high school, and then she started working. She got promoted at the job. She then applied to, and she actually took a different foreign language than Spanish because she wanted to do international business. So then she went to a college for international business and ended up studying in Germany, which was the language that she ended up taking. So it was one of those, just to have a theme within the application so that you kind of understand this college knows why you're choosing that major. I think what it comes down to, you're not just picking a major out of the hat. So.
Rose asks, are grades of selective courses and PEs less important than those of major courses? So I think she means, are electives less important than those 5 core courses that we talked about, math, English, science, history, and a language?
So some colleges do recalculate GPAs based on the core classes only. So the GPA that's on the transcript is not necessarily the GPA that the college is looking at. So I always tell parents just to ask that question when you're talking to admissions. But that doesn't mean that elective courses aren't important. I think that like I was talking about the student with business, she took intro to business, she took a marketing and an entrepreneurship course while she was in high school. So I think those elective courses, even though they might not have counted in the GPA, kind of showed her interest in business. So elective courses can show an interest in a certain major.
Rachanda asks, which is better to improve your chances, AP courses or dual enrollment? It probably depends if your school has, enough AP courses.
Yeah. So what the colleges will, there is a document that gets sent with every transcript called the school profile. So the school profile explains to the college what the highest level course at the school that's offered at the school. So AP is a nationally recognized curriculum. So what you're learning in Milwaukee, AP US history, you're learning in Fairfax, Virginia. So it is the same curriculum. And so the students are then asked to test. And if they test, then, and they get a 3, 4, or 5, then they would get the college credit. So a dual credit course is a college course automatically getting college credit. The history of AP is that the colleges recognize AP and IB higher than the dual enrollment because some dual enrollment courses are easier than AP. And it's not a curriculum that they can track. So.
Yeah, and to that point, Mary asks, how schools calculate or weight classes differently. For example, in some counties in AP classes, 0.5, and others it's 1.0 in addition. How do colleges just look at that profile to determine that? Or, how do they recalculate things?
Well, they unweight everything. So colleges will unweight. They'll take all those AP and honors courses and those dual enrollment courses, and they unweight it. And then they add points to the applicant for the number of APs and honors and dual enrollment. So they have their own system. It reminds me a little bit of the Wizard of Oz with what they're doing behind that curtain. So every school is going to do something different.
Jennifer asks, can you provide more information about the college fair at George Mason? And yes, this is actually the fair that has been at the Fair Oaks Mall. If you're from Northern Virginia, you may have heard of it. The mall shuts down on a Sunday night, and there are like hundreds and hundreds of colleges on both levels. It's at George Mason now, and so right now, it's always been every fall, and it's on. If you go to FCPS, their website, you can see it there. And I was asking admissions at JMU, is this still on? Because it's on the Fairfax County website. And she said, right now it is, but it hasn't been finalized yet. So hopefully it will be on. And that would be a great thing to bring kids. Somebody else said, well, what if I live in a rural area and we don't have college fairs? And, if the high school is big enough, college reps will still come to the school and they'll still visit juniors and seniors. So kids still will have a chance to meet the representative from the college. And if they don't, can you talk a little bit, Lisa, about demonstrated interests, other ways besides going to a college fair or a visit from a college admissions person that kids can get involved with to show the college that they're interested in?
So there are gazillion amount of virtual college visits out there. So if you go to the college website, you can take a virtual visit. A lot of times when you click on the specific college website, they are tracking your IP address. And also they may have you fill out a contact card. And so that immediately puts them into contact with you or your student. But the other thing that I encourage students to do all the time is email the admissions. When you go to the admissions office webpage, it'll say meet your counselor. You click on it. Sometimes you put in your zip code. Sometimes you put in, the town you live in or region, and it will pop up with the admissions officer that is your person. And so I always tell students to don't just email, hi, my name is blah, blah. You might want to have some pointed questions that you've done some research on the school. And this is, maybe not for 9th graders. It could be the end of 10th grade. I don't want to stress anybody out, but it is, something that as long as when you email, it starts you on the path to showing demonstrated interest as soon as they have your name and email.
Awesome. Okay, 2 last questions and then we'll wrap up. Do you recommend a different type of advising for kids, college advising for kids with ADHD?
So that's a hard question to answer because every kid is at a different level. So, I try to meet the kid where they're at. But one of the things I do encourage students with any type of disability is to get in contact with the college disability office. If they are receiving accommodations right now in high school, you definitely want to know, based on their diagnosis, what kind of accommodations are available in college for them. And so that's a question that you would ask the disability office. And so even early on, before they have been admitted, they will talk to people about what type of accommodations are offered through their office.
Awesome, thank you. Real quick, if the student can take AP or IB classes, which one would you recommend? From Elizabeth.
So that's a hard question, and it really comes down again to the school. So some schools, IB is a very expensive program, and so some schools might say, well, you have to be full IB in order to be an IB student, and some will say you can be partial IB. So it could be school dependent on what their rules are. I think the colleges definitely look at both programs as a rigorous program. I think if a student is thinking about applying abroad, that the IB program, to go through the UCAS system or Europe system, that the IB program is definitely higher ranked in Europe than it is in the US. But I think they're both on the same level. I think that students should just try to stretch where they can stretch. The IB program is a lot more intense as far as they have higher level, lower level exams, as well as a thesis statement that they have to write. So it depends on what else the student is involved in, as well as their load of time that they have to study.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. I'm sorry I didn't get to quite everybody's question, but feel free to email me, and I'm happy to pass on at ectutoring.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of our webinar this evening. Please wait for just a moment so that the survey will pop up, and you can take that if you don't mind. Lisa, a huge thanks to you. Thank you for your expertise this evening. I so appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Bye-bye.